Hey everybody, it's me again from the Gauntlet. Getting ready to do my fifth show for you. I've got 4 other videos out there. The first one was my debut or my introduction, basically explaining who I am, what I believe in, and as far as conservatism, traditionalism, patriotism, and Christianity. That's the first video. The second video is how communism, socialism, Marxism gained a strong foothold in our country via the colleges, Columbia University. That's a 2-part video. The third video is about the 45 Communist Goals for America, which is kind of an accompanying video to the prior one I just said, and that's a 2-parter also. The last video is that will be up by the time this video that I'm doing will be up, is about, it was a single issue about abortion, or as they call it, state-sanctioned murder. All these videos are out there, and 2 of them are 2-parters. I would ask that you watch the videos in their entirety, and please comment. Like, share, and hit that red button below and subscribe. I've had a slow start getting off the ground, and I knew I was gonna, because I don't have any name recognition. No one knows who I am. I'm not a attorney, a doctor, a professor, or any kind of reverend or priest or whatever. So I knew I was gonna have a slow start because no one knows me, and I don't have a vast, endless source of capital to be able to promote myself. So, but it's not so much about me. It doesn't matter about me. It's about our country, about the United States of America, which is being destroyed from the inside by what I call termites. I told you the next 8 to 10 videos I was going to do was going to be about single issue subjects. The last one I did was about abortion, aka state-sanctioned murder. And so I would say that this next one I'm going to do is just as much of a hot button issue, just as much of a contentious subject as abortion is. And that is the issue of our Second Amendment rights, our gun rights, the other side, the gun control. This issue is just as much of a hot button issue. And I would appreciate everyone just watch the whole video. As I said in the other videos, you never know what you're going to learn. You learn something new every day. And there's so many people that are ill-informed, they're not informed about what's going on. They believe a certain narrative. They don't believe that certain things are happening because the media is not doing their job. So, and schools are not doing their job. They're not educating kids right. They're trying to socialize them and indoctrinate them rather than tell them the true history of our country and without any some kind of political slant. So gun control. The first thing I'd like to do is go back a little bit in our history of our country. Everyone knows, if you don't know, the first permanent English settlement in the United States was Jamestown. Now, you all know Christopher Columbus basically founded it, or he didn't found it, he discovered America. But Jamestown was the first English settlement, and of course, a lot of how America started out basically was from the British Isles, the United Kingdom. That's where a lot of the people came from. And, I'm actually, I got mostly English blood. I got a lot of German blood. I got Scots-Irish, French, a little bit of Native American in me. So I definitely know about, as far as our ancestors. Matter of fact, our English ancestors came from Wiltshire. So, but either way, when people came to this country, we had hard going. We basically, a lot of people died from starvation, from disease, fighting with Native Americans, and because we had some tribes that were hostile towards us. Some tribes were friendly towards us, and we tried to get along with them ones. Of course, you go along a couple 150 years. Now, people came to this country because of religious persecution. We wanted to be able to worship freely. We didn't want the Church of England telling us how to do things. And the Church of England and the king were very overbearing. Basically, we all know how the king was and stuff. And we came to this country, we thought we could get away from it. And we did to a certain point, but not totally. The King of England and the Church of England still were overbearing, and then they started levying taxes, all kinds of different taxes, what they call the intolerable acts, the stamp tax, the tea tax. There was all kinds of different things. You had British soldiers that would basically be able to almost use eminent domain with no reason. So our ancestors, our founding fathers got fed up. They said enough's enough, we're getting taxed. We don't got any representation. We don't have no say. So that's why obviously everything culminated with the Boston Massacre. So, and then one little side issue I want to say is everyone should have a favorite patriot, all right? My favorite patriot, now conventional wisdom would say George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. My favorite patriot was actually Patrick Henry. And the reason I say that is because the guy was, you talk about balls, you talk about gutsy. This guy was as gutsy as anyone. He basically he's the only person that had the guts to say this on a some kind of a congressional body, and that was the House of Burgesses, which was the Virginia legislature, basically. And House of Burgesses was doubled as a church. A lot of people don't realize our American Revolution in earnest started in the churches. That's why when people sit there and say that we're not a Judeo-Christian country, they're full of crap. They're listening to revisionist history. Our country was absolutely Judeo-Christian. Now, I'm not saying we were a theocracy, but our roots came from that. But I'll get into that in another video. So Patrick Henry said, we all know, give me liberty, give me death. And trust me, they would have given him death. A lot of our founding fathers had death warrants on their head. So that was a bold speech for him to make. That's why I love Patrick Henry. I mean, I love all of our other founders, founding fathers. Either way, getting back, I think I said earlier, we wouldn't have won our freedom without guns. They would have laughed at us. What could have we said? How can you demand something from someone? When you go into a bank, you don't go into a bank with telling people what to do. You have to have something to back you up, a gun. It's the same thing with when you fight for your freedom. Back then, we had to have something, and we had guns. We was able to use guns. We had, back then it was before, our Constitution and Declaration. So we had the right to bear arms. So our Second Amendment is an inalienable right, all right? It's not a privilege. It's not a damn privilege, it's a right. Our founding fathers fought for that very hard. A lot of them, our patriots died. No, I'm not just saying just for our gun rights, but that was one of the rights they did fight for. That's why I would never compromise my right to bear arms. Never. All right? As I said, it's not a privilege, it's a right. And unlike what a lot of anti-gun idiots, dumbbells say, it's not for hunting. It's a deterrent against a tyrannical government. That's what it's for. It's so you can defend yourself. And when our founding fathers made up and decided we could have a right to bear arms, they done it with Great Britain in mind. They wanted to say they knew how governments can get. Governments are run by people. I assure you, I don't care where you live in the world. You could be living under one of the best countries ever, as we are. But people run a country. That's why you have governments. And governments can be run by bad people or good people. So you should always have the right to be able to defend yourself and your family. And that's something that I take seriously. Now, there's no restrictions on our gun rights about how many we can have. I get tired of hearing this crap. Oh, you don't need 15 guns, or you don't need an AR-15 or an AK-47. Who the hell is anyone to tell me what I can and cannot have? There's no restrictions on our Second Amendment that says we can't have how many. Now, we do have restrictions, reasonable restrictions on our Second Amendment. With every right, there's usually always extenuating circumstances or exceptions to that, right? We all know about the First Amendment. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You could incite, panic, and either way. We can't have, without a Class 3 license, you cannot have a fully automatic firearm. I can't have an Uzi. Now, if I get in the black market, but if anyone's got money to pay that on the black market. But I mean, you can't have an Uzi. You can't have a fully automatic rifle. You can't have a tank. You can't have uranium or plutonium, right? So there are exceptions on our right to bear arms. You can't have a 50 caliber machine gun. Also, another reasonable exception are people that are severely mentally ill. And I ain't talking about people that suffer from a little bit of depression here and there. I'm not talking about people with OCD. I'm talking about people that like schizophrenia. Now, someone like that, they're not in their right mind. So someone like that, I wouldn't want them to have a gun either, because you couldn't trust them. You don't know what they're going through. So there are exceptions already on our rights. We don't need to have them watered down any further. As I said, the gun rights are for our founding fathers fought for them. I can't stress that enough. That matters. That if they fought for all these rights. They fought for the Second Amendment as much as anything, because the Second Amendment is the linchpin to all our other rights. You realize that? Without the Second Amendment, our First Amendment, Third, Fourth, Fifth, you don't have no guarantee to it if the government says you don't. So, one thing you need to realize is people say, well, we have the Second Amendment, we don't have to worry about it. That's a very naive way of thinking. It doesn't matter if we have Second Amendment. You should never take it for granted. Never. And that's why I tell people you should, no matter how much you don't like politics, you should always be in the loop as far as knowing what's going on, at least current events. Don't think for a second they're not trying. Matter of fact, we all know one of the reasons gun control is such a big thing is because all these horrible shootings that are happening. Back during our former president, his administration, Obama, I remember him in a speech when people were calling for gun control, and he basically said, I'm constrained by our Constitution. I can't do a lot because of the Second Amendment. So don't think they're not trying. And there's a congressman out in California named Eric Swalwell, a little creep. He basically called openly, said maybe it's time for us to start confiscating guns and getting rid of the Second Amendment. Same thing with the former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, John Paul Stevens. He said the same thing. Maybe it's time we revisit the Second Amendment. So don't think they're not trying. They haven't succeeded yet, but don't think they're not trying. Don't ever, you ever heard the saying, never say never? Never assume that it will never happen. But as I said, a lot of people do take the Second Amendment and gun ownership, take the rights for granted. They just think it'll always be there. But freedom, there's a saying, eternal vigilance is the price for freedom. And it's true. You know, you have to continually be on guard because you never know the next generation. We're looking at these millennials now, and a lot of them are noodle spined. They have they get hurt and whine and cry over the smallest, silliest crap. So these are the kind of people that are going to run our country. And but one thing, obviously we know one of the biggest reasons that gun control is such a hot button issue, as I said earlier, is because of all these horrible mass shootings, whether they're in theaters, schools, churches, yada yada. And we all know, and these are horrible examples, there's no doubt about it. When someone dies, someone's murdered in such a brutal way and without any reason or explanation, it's horrible. No one wants to see a loss of life. But one thing I will say, and I firmly believe this, most of these shootings, I believe, are absolutely engineered. Notice I didn't say made up or fabricated. I believe they're happening, but I believe they're being engineered. They're what you might call false flags. I don't believe a lot of these shootings are organic anymore. Now, I think there's some that have been organic. In other words, people, lone person by themselves. I think a lot of these shootings are doing exactly what people intended them to do. American public starts begging certain people, certain corners of society starts wanting gun control. Now, one thing you need to know is the people that are calling for gun control the loudest, the big mouths like Bloomberg and some of these other people, you got to remember who these people are. They're multi-millionaires. Now, you tell me, do you think they're ever going to have a problem obtaining firearms? Do you think they're ever going to have a problem being able to defend themselves? No. That's rhetorical. They're not gonna. These people are millionaires. They'll always have access to firearms and guns. They'll always have access to bodyguards, security that have guns, because they're hypocrites. They live up in these ivory towers, gated communities. They don't share the same risks we do. How often do you think you're ever going to see an average person like a Bloomberg type sitting in a theater? However often do you ever think you're going to see a Bloomberg type being in a high school or a junior high? Most of the time, no. They don't share the same risks we do. So it's easy for them to call for gun control. So, you got to remember who's calling for it and what they, why would you want it so bad? And that's why these shootings are happening, I believe. Why most of them are. Because they know it gives them a reason to call for gun control. One thing I would tell everyone, never register your guns. Never. If you live in a state where you have to do it, I would move away. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's some states like California, New York, and a lot of these states that, some of these places like Washington, D.C., and a lot of these places that have strict gun laws. This can't be said enough. They're some of the highest gun crimes in the world, So the thing, another thing, it's kind of when worth mentioning, I might say, is we all know that the shootings, when people die, that's when people start really clamoring for gun control. And admittedly, that's a knee-jerk reaction. You can understand people think, well, someone shot someone's gun. But do you realize that the most devastating loss of human life on our soil, you know where I'm going with this, did not come from guns? If you said September 11, 2001, 9/11, you're right. Almost 3,000 Americans or people died without the use of any kind of gun or firearm. Box cutters. They took control of these planes. We all know what they done. They used planes as weapons of mass destruction, and they killed almost 3,000, around 3,000 people. No guns. So where are the big mouths here? Gun control would not have affected that at all, and 3,000 people still would have died. The Boston Marathon bombing, once again, another example. No guns. They had used pressure cookers. Then there's suicide bombers over in Israel. No guns. They killed people. People are still dying. But they want to sweep this under the rug of convenience. They don't want to talk about this. That's what tells me that they're not sincere about gun control as far as people losing their lives. They're not sincere about it. It's the criminal mind you have to worry about. There are evil people out there, and I believe there are things we can do, just like the Parkland shooting with Nicholas Cruz. There was plenty of signs this guy was a nut bar, all right, but they didn't do anything about it, all right? For people to sit there and have this blanket thought of confiscating guns and everyone giving them up, that ain't going to happen. Like Charlton Heston said, from my cold dead hands, I'm not going to go out and kill anyone, all right? I know better. It's wrong. I don't care if people look at me the wrong way. I don't care if I'm ostracized. I'm not going to go out and shoot someone. It's wrong. So you ain't going to tell me that I can't have my AK-47 or my AR-15 or whatever it is I have. You ain't going to tell me that. And if you do, you can go to hell, because I ain't getting rid of it. I'm never going to do any of these dumb gun buyback programs. That's why I respect the NRA so much, the National Rifle Association, or other gun rights groups. Because the NRA said no compromises, ever. God bless them. God bless all these groups that fight for our right to remain free to be able to use guns. That's why the term shall not be infringed is there. What do these anti-gun idiots not realize, not comprehend about shall not be infringed? There's not any kind of asterisk. There's not any kind of but. Shall not be infringed, right? But people die without the use of guns. As a matter of fact, in Great Britain, knife attacks are on the rise. There's an alarming amount of knife and machete attacks that are on the rise. And, Great Britain, we all know they have total gun control. So, some things to remember about that, You got to remember who these people are calling for gun control. They're always going to have access to guns. If you get rid of your guns, you're not getting them back. I guarantee if the Second Amendment if people ever agree to get rid of it or get rid of their guns, you're not getting them back. We've already seen, look at Dick's Sporting Goods. They don't sell guns. Walmart, I know Walmart sells ammunition because I get ammunition there. They don't sell guns. At least some Walmarts don't. So you got to remember this. People, don't ever take it for granted. I know you're thinking, well, you keep saying that because I want to hammer it into your head. Don't take it for granted. I believe that one of the big reasons our society's in the messes in is not because of guns. It's because of a godless society. It's because we don't know how to discipline our kids. We don't spank our kids. We give them everything they want. They're spoiled. And we don't go to church like we used to. Church is a good thing. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, we're not a theocracy. You don't have to go to church. But I think it's a good thing. And I absolutely believe that when you spank a kid, you teach a kid right from wrong, and Christianity and religion do a lot of that. It does a lot of that. When you spank a kid, like I've heard people say, well, kids are taught violence and they're being spanked. This is the reason. No, it's not the reason. I was spanked. My brothers were spanked. I know other kids that were spanked. We never went out. Our generation never went out and started shooting people up. Matter of fact, when I was going to high school, the only kind of thing I had heard of were these post office shootings, and of course the University of Texas, Charles Whitman. It was a rarity. You didn't hear about it much. So A lot of it has to do with a society that don't have any value. Life don't have any value to people. They don't care. There's no overriding figure. I mean, if you're looking at a person and you're thinking that's your, there's no hedge against it. A person is a person. Most people look at another human and they're like, who are you to tell me this? And we all know criminals do not obey laws, right? They just don't. As I said, we couldn't have won our independence without guns. Remember that. That's something to really marinate in your mind. We could not have won our independence without guns. Now, one thing I always say, and it cracks me up, and once again, this is another thing that's very inconvenient for the anti-gun idiots to think about. Burglary. Here's a good example. A lot of times burglary is taking place in a neighborhood. You have criminals that canvass a neighborhood. What people don't realize, a lot of times burglary happens by people that you end up knowing. You end up knowing them. Maybe they live a street over. Like some neighborhood kid or a person who's 20-year-old that starts burglarizing houses because he's got a drug habit. Either way, my point is this. If you have a kid or a group of kids or whatever, and it wouldn't have to be kids, maybe men, they're canvassing a neighborhood, and they happen to know these people. You have two houses side by side. Now, one house has a family that is totally against guns. They're totally gun control, and they live it. They're totally they're not hypocrites. They live it. They're against guns. They feel uncomfortable about having them in the house and all that. And then you have another family that is strident gun rights. They're NRA. They wear it proudly on their shoulder. They even have it in their window. We believe in gun rights. We have an NRA thing on their window. And then you just know they have NRA hats. And that's one family. You have the other family. Now you have a burglar. What house do you think they're going to go into? If you were a burglar, once again, this is rhetorical. If you were a burglar, which house would you go into? I know damn well. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know you're going to go with the path of least resistance. You go into a house with no guns, especially if you have a gun. What is the person going to come down and do? Get out of my house. I'm calling the cops. They may call the cops, and that person may end up killing you. Or they may just end up grabbing a bunch of crap and getting the hell out of there. Whereas the person that has the guns, they could probably avoid it altogether. The person's going to say, I'm not going to go in there because even though I have a gun, they have a gun, I could get shot. I'm going to go with the house with no guns. Guns are a tool like everything else. They just have to be used properly. They have to be respected. And that's the biggest thing. Another thing people always hear about is, USA, our gun control, our gun crimes are out of control. But did you know if you take out there's 7 cities, if you take them out, like Detroit, DC, Chicago, Dallas, and I believe maybe Atlanta, LA, I'm not sure all the cities, but if you take out these 7 cities, our gun crimes plummet. I mean, plummet big time. So a lot of this stuff, when you have these centers of industry and there's people packed in together, a lot of that stuff's going to happen. But I mean, that bears with repeating. You take out 7 cities, our rate falls. So, you have a right to, if you want to give up your guns. If you want to be an idiot and give up your guns, you must feel guilty. You must feel like you're going to do something. I would never give up my guns because I know I'm not going to kill anyone. Now, one thing that people say all the time, and the idiots on the other side don't seem to understand, is criminals do not obey laws. I'll say that again. Criminals do not obey laws. Now, people say, well, let's ban guns. Everything will be all right. We'll live in a fuzzy little utopia, which is complete horse piss. Did banning drugs stop people from using drugs? Did banning alcohol stop people from drinking? No. No, it didn't. And I guarantee you ever go along with any kind of banning guns and get rid of them, as they said it, and it needs to be said again, over and over, to reiterate it over and over and again till these idiots on the other side understand. The only people that will have guns if you ban them are the criminals, because the criminals are not going to listen to some absurd, silly gun control. They're not going to listen to it. They don't. That's why they're called a criminal. That's why they're called an outlaw, because they live outside of the law. Average people like me and you, my family, people I know in the neighborhood I live in, most of them, at least I mean, I don't know about their private lives, but all I know is the people that I know, they respect gun rights. They respect having a gun, you know. I have a gun right here, and it's a 40. It's a Sig Sauer 40. It's got a gun lock on it. See? It's got a gun lock. That's called responsible ownership. It's not loaded. There's no magazine in it. So there's no way to be able to activate it. The clip, or excuse me, not the clip. The magazine is right here. It's loaded, but at the same time, it's not in the chamber. So that's called responsible gun ownership. A kid could not get into this. See? That's what gun ownership's about. Either way, I just wanted to let people know, that there's a lot of people out there, millions of Americans are gun owners. And we're not going to have people telling us we can't have guns when our founding fathers fought for it, for us to have the right to have guns. So that is basically the lesson for today, my show for today. And I appreciate everyone viewing it and giving me comments and liking, subscribing. As I said, I need all the support I can get, and I would appreciate it. And God bless America. God bless you. And I'll see you back here my next show, right? Have a good one.